Thousand Autumns, is a Meng Xi Shi novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 104. Yuan Xiaoxiu feigned indifference. Me and Shen Qiao were just chatting, and I spoke a bit more. What dragging out are you talking about? Shen Qiao didn't want to say more to her, turned around intending to head back up the mountain, but Yuan Xiaoxiu in a flash blocked his path again. Shen Qiao, are you not happy to see me? How come you run away after only a few sentences? If you don't want to be in my close circle, friends would be fine. Yuan Xiaoxiu smiled gently, like a thousand blooms, all colors returning to spring. If it were anyone else, even if their hearts didn't waver, they would have to pause. Who knew that Shen Qiao didn't slow down even half a step, continued forward, did not spare a single minute for beauty. This degree of steadfastness could be termed half extraterrestrial, except for Yan Wushi, that anomaly. How often would Yuan Xiaoxiu meet this kind of person? Shen Qiao saw her preparing to make her move, said blandly, I am a Daoist and do not kill indiscriminately, but that does not mean I will not kill a person. That day you saw Huo Zijing die by my hand. Yuan Zongju, have you decided what price you will pay to block my path? Yuan Xiaoxiu laughed. Shen Lang, no need to get so worked up. I have no intent in making you my enemy. Out of an abundance of caution, I still have to keep you a little, in case you ruin the bigger picture, but even if you go back now, I'm afraid you probably won't be able to change much. Seeing as we got along so well, I offer you this sincere advice. You are not from Chiniangwan. To make a stand in this situation, Yi Baikan should be first. Why would Shen Lang get caught up in these muddled waters? Her words were carefully considered, tender and ensnaring, but as the esteemed Hehuan sect Zongju, would she speak her heart and soul only because the other was easy on the eyes? Shen Qiao was kind, and didn't want to needlessly cause conflict, but was not stupid or easy to fool. Half hearing these words, directed himself up the mountain. Yuan Xiaoxiu originally wanted to stop him, but Shen Qiao used Tianqua Hongying to its upper limit, not waiting for her to catch up, had transformed into a shiver of shadow, leaving the other far behind. For a commoner to make an ascent of the mountain, it would require at least half a day, but for Jianghu masters, half a shishan was enough. For Shen Qiao's caliber of Qinggong, the time to burn an incense stick was sufficient. When Yuan Xiaoxiu had said, even if you go back now, I'm afraid you probably won't be able to change much, it clearly indicated something big was happening on the mountain. The disciples that had been guarding Chiniangwan's gates had long been beaten by Hehuan sect earlier. This time going up the mountain, Shen Qiao had a straight trajectory with no obstacles. Heaviness grew in his heart, as he finally crested the mountain peak to return to Chiniangwan's main square. He caught sight of Yi Baikan, under the gaze of the crowd, exchange a move with someone. The other did not move, but Yi Baikan was forced to take 3 steps back. Looking closer at everyone's faces, they all seemed to be frozen at a moment of shock and disbelief. The one that had exchanged a move with Yi Baikan was unfamiliar. Shen Qiao did not recognize him. His style of dress was from another region, and now standing still, expressionless, he looked like someone who was used to not saying much, but in his silence, he carried a powerful, domineering aura, so much that no one dared make a sound. Shen Qiao paused. Even without asking for his name, he knew who he was. Tuja's #1 master Hulagu. Even if he was mentally prepared, seeing this person, an ineffable feeling rose in his heart. It turned out to be him. How could it be him? He really wasn't dead? The previously brazen Sang Jingxin was standing respectfully behind this new group of arrivals. Seeing that with one palm strike he had managed to beat back Yi Baikan, he stepped forward, smiling. This Zhenjiangwen sect leader Yi Baikan, considered among the best in the world, and a leader among the Daoist sects, doesn't seem to be a match at all for Qianbei. What a farce is the world's top 10, not to be trusted. Qianbei's Wujiang can hardly be rivaled by others, and truly deserves to be called number 1 in the world. Hulagu paid no mind to his flattery, maintained a blank face, with no discernible expression. I came to challenge Yi Baikan, personal business, not related to Hehuan sect in any way. I didn't require your help with the preamble. Sang Jingxin wasn't fazed, still smiling he said, Qianbei speaks seriously, we just heard about Shijiandawai, and came to check it out. We didn't know that when we arrived, Qianbei would be arriving shortly thereafter. If he had heard this conversation out of context, maybe Shen Qiao would have believed that they were here by coincidence to wreak havoc, but what Yuan Xiaoxiu said earlier was a reminder. Then he realized, Hehuan sect definitely knew Hulagu was going to show up, so arrived before him. One reason was to tire out Yi Baikan's attack potential, and increase the chances of Hulagu's victory. 2 was to take advantage of the situation. As to why Hehuan sect would help Hulagu, that was easy to explain. That day Yuan Yun was able to ascend the throne, Yuan Yang's Empress Ashina must have played a part, although she was not Yuan Yun's biological mother, but in all things Yuan Yun liked to oppose his old dad. Where the previous emperor respected but kept his distance from Tuju, he would purposefully hold them close. In that case, if Hehuan sect, receiving support from Yuan Yun, formed an alliance with Tuju, it would not be unusual. Yi Baikan showed no great emotion, retreating 3 steps was already very impressive. Hulagu was no ordinary master, it was someone who had crossed paths with Qi Fengge more than 20 years ago, and in these 20 years, everyone assumed he was dead. Even Duan Vinyang wandering the central plains had repeated the false rumor of his master's death. Who knew that one day the wind would part the clouds, a legendary figure would return from death? How could one not be shocked? Many people in the crowd still had yet to figure out Hulagu's identity, and those that had guessed thought they were seeing a ghost in broad daylight. Shen Qiao observed Yi Baikan for a while. He saw that the other had flushed momentarily, a sign that he had internal injuries, and was not as unfazed as his appearance might suggest. If he could see it, Hulagu had no reason not to. His gaze fell on Yi Baikan. Hulagu said coldly, I heard that Zhenjiangwen is considered a leader among the Daoist sects, but your Wujiang can't even match the Qi Feng of the past. Under this kind of enormous pressure, it was no small feat that Yi Baikan could maintain his composure. Zhenjiangwen never considered ourselves leader of the Daoist sects, and this poor one has never compared myself to Qi Daozun. Your Wujiang is strong, I admire it, but the reason you came today, was it to attend Shijiandawai or was it for Zhenjiangwen? The former would be to have a typical martial exchange, the latter to seek revenge and destruction. Hulagu said blandly, Shijiandawai is but fishing for fame. If you have true potential, why would you rush to attend this round? I originally thought since Zhenjiangwen and Yi Baikan's reputation was so resounding, there ought to be something stellar, but now as I see it, it's merely so-so. He was on other people's grounds, but spoke condescendingly. Even if Yi Baikan could tolerate it, the Zhenjiangwen disciples standing behind him could not swallow this insult. Someone shouted, you are so strong, but that year weren't you beaten by Qi Fengge and reduced to a shriveling turtle and forced to wander the outskirts for 20+ years? Now that Qi Fengge is dead, you jump out to seek the misfortune of the Central Plains Wulan. How is this considered virtuous end? His last word, brave, was subject to Hulagu's cold gaze. The person speaking was terrified into silence, bit back the word in his throat, his face flushing red. Hulagu did not speak. The one who replied was Duan Vinyang standing behind him. Your Central Plains Wulin, after 20 plus years has yet to emerge an opponent that can stand on equal footing with my master, yet you still have the face to speak so brazenly. If I were you, I would have already smashed my head in out of shame. What leader of the Daoist sects, as I see it, the Central Plains Wulin of today, if Chi Fenga were still alive, only he would be worthy of being my master's opponent. What a bother that my Shizun considered the talent in the Central Plains verdant and flourishing. Upon hearing that Shijiandawai was to be held here, excitedly hurried over to attend. Tisk tisk, it really did not live up to expectations. Chiniangwan's people were mortified by his words. The Jianghu people present also had nothing to offer in reply. Yi Baikan's Wujiang they had all seen clearly. In the match with Sang Jingxing, stunning and exceptional, Yi Baikan no doubt exceeded Hehuan sect by an interval. They hadn't yet had a moment to rejoice, when Hulagu arrived. With him here, no matter Yi Baikan, or Sang Jingxing, they all had to bow their heads. Yi and Sang, already existed beyond what commoners could attain. Now there was Hulagu, like the September moon, high and unreachable, rendering ambition into hopelessness. Some thought of the fight 20 plus years ago, sighed that they had been too young to see it in person. The Chi Fenga that could defeat Hulagu, he would have been beyond imagination. However, not everyone present fawned the other's airs, smothered their own pride. There was one who couldn't stand Duan Vinyang's words, directly stepped out from the crowd, shouted loudly, "You've only been to Chiniangwan, and dare to speak your bold words, saying that there's no one worthy in the Central Plains. You should know that there are plenty of masters in the world. There's the Buddhist sects in the north, the RU sects in the south, unless you've already challenged them all." Li Yulagong's rank list just now of the world's masters didn't include Hulagu. You two master disciples speak and sing amongst yourselves. It's really unrefreshing, only adds to laugh material for others. Hulagu's face was impassive, but Duan Vinyang narrowed his eyes. What is your name? What sect do you belong to? That person's heart shook, but with the crowd watching he couldn't retreat, eventually loudly announced, Kuiji Wang, Wangzhou. The Wang family did not rely on Hehuan sect or Tuju to live. Why should he be afraid? Wang Sanlang's courage worked itself up several notches. Duan Vinyang raised an eyebrow, his voice rose slightly in pitch, "Oh, Kuiji Wang." Saying this, his arm had extended, like lightning his whip descended from the sky, lashed directly at Wang Sanlang. Wang Sanlang watched the other make their move, but had no time to draw his sword, could only retreat. His speed was no match for the other. He hadn't gotten very far, the whip had curled onto his wrist, inflicting immense pain, shattering bone. Ah! He couldn't help yelling out, "The sword is his hand falling out." San Lang. Wang Erlang, eyes bulging, flew to support him. But someone was faster than him. The other drew their sword and with one cut in the air, sword chi swelled forth, in an instant had surrounded Duan Vinyang. Duan Vinyang made a sound of surprise, as if he didn't expect the other's Wujiang to be not too shabby. He was forced to pull back his whip, and face the other head on. Then he realized the other was a beautiful young woman. All of the Wujiang in the world, only speed left no openings. From Duan Vinyang's whip one lash fell after the other, giving the other no room to breathe. Under this kind of pressure, the woman actually did well, her sword edge advancing, not falling behind. It could be seen that she likely came from a renowned sect, was taught by a master. With more time, she could become quite accomplished. But Duan Vinyang was listed among the world's top 10, even if ranked last. It was not an exaggeration. although this young woman's Wujiang was high, she was naive, and lacked real fighting experience. After 3 moves, Duan Vinyang saw an opening, aimed at it, his whip headed for the other's weakness. The young woman had no love for this fight, her intent had been to help Wang Sanlang out, and having achieved this, retreated entirely, drifted to the ground, not willing to meet Duan Vinyang's brute force. My thanks to Guniangzi for saving me. Wang Sanlang was quite moved, he had been struck by her beauty at first glance, meeting her severe words, he didn't expect that when he fell into danger, that it would be this beauty who would extend a hand. No need for thanks. Gu Hanbo said blandly. Although Wang Sanlang's behavior was a bit rash, he wasn't in the wrong, everyone lowered their voices in the face of Hulagu, only Wang Sanlang dared make a sound, that alone required courage, if she could save but she didn't, it would only encourage this kind of atmosphere. On this point, Gu Hanbo grew up with Shen Qiao, and held a similar viewpoint to her Zhang Jiao Shikshan. With Gu Hanbo's intervention, Wang Sanlang didn't suffer any major injuries, but seeing the master-disciple pair before them with such high Wujiang, never mind fighting the Shifu, they couldn't even beat the disciple, the feeling of being left in the dust welled up in people's hearts. To some degree, Qiniangwen's plan to form an alliance against Hehuan sect and the Buddhist sects, had already failed. Li Qingyu's hand was already on his sword, but a hand reached out, and held his arm down firmly. This was Yi Baikan's hand. Over there, Hulagu watched Gu Hanbo, abruptly asked, "Who was Chi Fenga to you?" Gu Hanbo had long noticed Shen Qiao, who was standing in the corner of the stone platform, couldn't help but shoot him a glance. She said, "That is my master." Hearing her relationship to Chi Fenga, Hulagu's countenance changed slightly, even while he was fighting Yi Baikan he hadn't regarded the other properly, and now he was examining Gu Hanbo carefully, then resumed his impassive expression. "The one who knows his master is the disciple." Duan Vinyang smiled, "Shizun has no need to feel regret, if this disciple is not wrong, this woman is Gu Hanbo, she should be the only female disciple under Chi Fenga, although her power isn't great, but she has several shikshan, one of them has inherited Suan Dus Han's Zhangjiao position, and killed Shidi with his sword, what a coincidence, he's also here today." Saying this, he looked in Shen Qiao's direction. "Shen Daozang, long time to see, you're doing well." In this moment, everyone's attention fell on Shen Qiao. Shen Qiao had been standing off to the side, half shadow, in this moment he naturally couldn't continue as a bystander, so holding his sword he slowly walked forward, until he reached a place that was not far from the other, he stopped. "Thank you for your thoughts, luckily no great difficulties." His tone was very even, and was not affected by Hulagu's appearance. "You are Shen Qiao." Hulagu's gaze moved from his face to the Shen Hetongbai sword in his hand, on Hulagu's face passed a sliver of reminiscence. "Correct, this poor one Shen Qiao, today to be able to see Qianbei in person, is truly fortunate. It is a shame that my master has passed, otherwise if he knew Qianbei was still in the land of the living, he would have been very happy." Duan Vinyang suspected that these words targeted his Shifu's fake death and subsequent hiding in Tiju for 20-some years, only daring to emerge until after Chi Fenga's death, but looking at the other's peaceful expression and kind appearance, maybe it didn't have that kind of meaning. "Your caliber is very high, but as of now you are still no match for me. If we were to wait another 3-5 years, maybe we could have a good match, but you killed Kunyi, since I met you today, I cannot let you leave this mountain alive." Hulagu's face was calm, his words meaning, he held Shen Qiao's life in his hands. Shen Qiao smiled, replied with only one word, "Really?" This kind of situation, verbal sparring was of no use, although he appeared calm, his mind might not be. Bystanders were just here for the show. Only if you were personally involved, could you sense the threat emanating from Huligo's body, that kind of extreme pressure. When Yi Baikan and the other fought, he must have also suffered through this kind of torment. The other's strength had already reached a nameless, indescribable state. The heavens held 10,000 permutations, mystery within mysteries, could only depend on intuition, not explanation. Could he win? Shen Qiao watched the person before him, had reduced his breathing to near nothing. This will be his most difficult match since he entered the Jianghu. In terms of danger, it was not less than his match against Sang Jingxing. He was Qi Feng's disciple. From the moment he accepted the mantle from his Shizun's hands, it was determined, this match could not be avoided. The author would like to say, Shen Qiao, look here, the director wants you to stay in the bathroom for one more episode. Lao Yan, oh, no problem, the debt owed will eventually be repaid one day with sex. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.